This is the biggest way that this has impacted me. As we were in New York City on Wednesday taping the Mel Robbins show, we had already canceled all live audiences out of an abundance of caution. We were due to tape all the way through the end of next week. And I, after Wednesday's show, walked into the control room with the entire team and expected to just debrief on the show, and Mindy Borman, my executive producer, turned to me and said, "That's it, we're a wrap, we're done." And then they announced that 2 employees at CBS, where we tape, had tested positive and that the building that we were in was getting quarantined. And just like that, my dream of hosting a daytime talk show, over. No time to say goodbye, no time to get complete, no time to thank the cast, no time to get my stuff out of the office. It was run upstairs, grab what you can from the green room, and get the out of the building. And it was so discombobulating that I think it took me about 36 hours to get my feet back on the planet. There's a really powerful concept that I learned from Carrie Lorenz called span of control. And it's being borrowed as a military term, and I'm going to tell you how I've used it, okay, in order to quiet the anxiety, because I don't know about you, but when I start to get anxious about all the uncertainty, I feel my heart race, I feel my mind start to spin, I start to think about what if this, what if that, what if the other thing, what if another thing happens? And that's not helpful. Not only is it not helpful because you can't solve problems when you're in that state, it's not helpful because you start to panic, and that is super scary. And it's also not helpful because it suppresses your immune system. So I get home, there's nobody here. And in a time of crisis, where do you want to be? With your family. You want to be somewhere safe. And so borrowing this term span of control, what is it? Well, it's a term. Carrie Lorenz happened to be the first F-14 Tomcat pilot in the history of the United States. And she's one of my dear friends. And the military term span of control is this idea that when you're in a crisis, which you're in right now, because there's so much uncertainty, you're okay right now, but there's so much uncertainty out there. In order to calm your anxiety and focus your mind, you've got to narrow your span of control. And the way that I did that for myself is very simple. I want you to pick 3 things today that you need to do that will make you feel safe, and that will make you feel safe regarding your family or safer, and that will make you feel a little bit more prepared for being still or being isolated for the next 3 weeks. Let's just start there, okay? And I want you to write those in the comments. What do you need to do? 3 things in order for you to feel safe, in order for your family to feel a little bit safer, and in order for you to feel like you could be where you are or get to the place you need to get to, so that if you were just sitting there for 3 weeks, you were going to be good, okay? Just focusing on those 3 things was super helpful for me, because it meant I don't need to worry about whether or not they're grounding domestic air travel right now. I don't need to worry about whether or not Walt Disney is closed. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen in May or June.
We all know there is a global pandemic, and we know that there's been a stock market collapse, and if you've been paying attention to the news, you know that the world is in a messy place. The first thing I would offer to you with great humility is I would remind you to stay centered and to avoid dropping into the mass hysteria that we're seeing people fall into. I'm not saying don't watch the news. I'm saying watch the news selectively. I'm saying don't be concerned. I think we should all be concerned, and I think we should all be prepared. But I think there's a difference between, allowing fear to take you over and being prepared, but also being positive, realizing this eventually will pass, and messy times make greater leaders and everyday heroes. So One thing I would say is, remember to bring on your kindness. I was reading about a couple who stocked up on Lysol wipes and then were selling them to make this huge profit. And I'm not judging, I'm just saying, we are brothers and sisters on a small planet right now. And I think we all need to roll up our sleeves and, of course, protect your family, but also bring your humanity to your community and do whatever you can to help other people. The second thing I would say is a lot of people who follow me are business people, a lot of leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs. Keep on asking yourself this fundamentally important question, which is, how can I deliver even more value to my marketplace? How can I deliver even more value to the marketplace? How can I help even more people? How can I be even more of use to my customers and the people who I do business with? Because the marketplace will always reward your mastery, especially in difficult times. Personally, I would say over-communicate with your family. Show them even more love. Show them that they are safe. I would also say this is an amazing time to look at your insecurities. In times of sunshine, in times of ease, we often don't look at ourselves. I think this is a great time to develop your mindset, to strengthen your heart set, to optimize your health set, to escalate your soul set, the 4 interior empires that I teach. And if you're scared right now, if you're insecure right now, if you're losing your energy right now, if you're unfocused right now, if you're worried right now, if you're sticking your head into the sand like an ostrich right now, if you're suffering from normalcy bias, I've been talking to some people, they think everything's okay. I don't think everything is okay. And so normalcy bias is a human tendency born of fear to say everything is okay. And that could get you in a lot of trouble right now. I'm saying stay positive, stay centered, stay focused, be prepared.
If you were in Italy right now, what would you do? What steps would you take as a businessman?
As a businessman, I think from what I've heard...
Well, let me comment on that, too, because Italy did just shut down all of its businesses. Only pharmacies are open right now.
Yeah, so it's commercially closed. There's not a lot you can do right now. However, they don't shut down the internet, correct? So if you're selling products online, then you are okay. If you're selling products that are subscription-based models, learning from home things, drop shipping models that are outside Italy, it's time to start considering. Let's say you sell things that, but you're not using drop shipping. Now is when you would transition to drop shipping. You could try to do things where you're actually, if your manufacturing is occurring outside of Italy, if distribution occurs outside Italy, then hey, your customers are outside Italy. Guess what? You can keep going here. But remember. This phase will pass where a country's on lockdown. What they're trying to do right now is stop the speed of transmission, not so that people won't get it. Everyone's going to get it. All right? From what I've heard from very, very well-informed sources, doctors, experts in epidemiology, all right? They expect anywhere from 40 to 70% of the human population to eventually get coronavirus. Not this novel version, number 19, right? Why? Because nobody has natural immunity and it's highly contagious. What they're trying to do now is slow the spread of the virus so as not to overwhelm the healthcare systems. Because here's the deal. Most people that get this are going to be just fine. It's for people that are young, it barely affects them at all. People in their 20s, 30s, no big problem. There are some complications, especially if you have some health complications before. But for the most part, generally speaking, it's not a death sentence for people that get it in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, or 50s even, right? But when you get into your 60s and 70s, especially if you're compromised in some way, you got a serious chance of it becoming either fatal or requiring serious hospitalization and intervention, in being intubated. Perhaps there's support needed for your kidneys and your heart, whatever that might be. What they can't afford right now is for all the cases to come in at once. So what they're trying to do here is slow down the transmission, not stop it. slow down the transmission so the healthcare system can deal with it over time versus all at once. It will collapse the system, and the people that really need care most, older people, immune compromised people, pregnant women, I think are susceptible too, right? If everyone's rushing in at once, there's not enough tubes to go around to intubate people.
First off, a couple of things about the coronavirus. Obviously, it's the only news that anyone is looking at today. And, all these travel bans have been put in place. All these events are canceled. And it's sad. All these jobs are being lost, or people are scared about their own jobs and their own careers. So just a couple of thoughts about the coronavirus. I think we don't actually know, for instance, many numbers. We don't know how many people have already been infected but don't have symptoms. We also don't know what the fatality rate is, because if the bulk of the people have been infected with no symptoms, then we don't have a true picture of the fatality rate. So, for instance, with SARS or H1N1 in 2009, we originally thought the fatality rate was like 3 or 4%, and it turned out to be 0.01% when we found out that millions of people were already infected, but they recovered without having any symptoms. The other thing to look for in the data with coronavirus is how quickly do countries like South Korea, and now we'll see Italy, how quickly, at first we see infected cases go up like this. They double every day. But then we start to see it level off. We saw that in China. We've seen it in South Korea. Hopefully we'll see it in Italy. That's the next country that had a large amount of infections. The reason China and South Korea went like this to this is two reasons. One is social distancing and quarantining. And the other is, as more and more people get it, more and more people get immune. There's a herd immunity, and that might happen here in the U.S. So we're still in this period in the U.S., but eventually we'll be in this period. So the worst case, that's going to happen. The worst case scenario is that this goes a little too far and our healthcare system is like this. But my guess is, because of all the social distancing that's happening now, meaning people aren't going to events as much, and we're seeing this in all the data, people aren't traveling, flights are empty, the NBA is canceled, meetings are getting canceled, we'll start to see the number of infected cases start to flatten. So look for that in the data, look for that in the next 30 days or less. The other thing we're seeing with the current environment is that massive stimulus is being put into the economy. That doesn't matter so much as people are getting sick and dying, but it will matter in the long run in terms of people's jobs, careers, money situation, and so on. We are seeing social distancing happen. We're seeing these travel bans. So it does suggest to me that eventually we'll stop spiking and we'll see the number of new cases starting to flatten. There's also work on a cure, so keep track of that. There is a lot of fake news about cures, but I would look into, if you Google this yourself, I'm not going to recommend anything, but if you see things that were sort of herbal remedies for things like malaria or things that affected the immune system, consider getting those. But what I want to talk about really is not the coronavirus, but everybody is waking up anxious. So someone asked, how much is media driven? A lot is media driven, and a lot now is political, but this is an exponentially growing disease that is causing some fatalities. My guess is the final fatality rate won't be anywhere near 2%. It'll be somewhere between 0.1 and 0.5%. And I'm basing this not on my own research, but on what other expert immunologists have told me on my podcast. But again, let's look at the anxiety. I wake up anxious, not only for myself, but I know a lot of people who are losing jobs, they're losing income opportunities, and it scares me not just for them, but for society. If society as a whole is anxious, then decisions will be made that are irrational. When people are panicking, they don't make rational decisions. So the key now is to focus on yourself being as rational as possible so you could avoid making decisions that might harm yourself, might harm your family, might harm your job. Don't make irrational decisions now while data is still kind of being gathered. And again, what we're seeing is massive stimulus. I mean, the New York Federal Reserve just announced they're putting $1.5 trillion into the economy. That's going to drive up a lot of different markets, regardless of what happens with the virus. That's what they did in 2009, which effectively saved the economy. There's also going to be kind of it seems like there'll be some income tax relief at some point, and there's various other measures in terms of money that are going to help people.
What is up, party people? This is my daily quarantine coronavirus check-in. I just did an interview with Dr. Judd Brewer, and we were talking about anxiety through these times, how to mitigate that, how to cope with being out and about, not being able to go out and about. And the interview is live now, by the way, so go check it out. I think it's really good. He has some amazing advice. His specialty is anxiety, addiction, recovery, breaking habit loops. He talks pretty powerfully about how anxiety and worry are more habits than they are anything else, and how to break out of that. But anyway, the punchline of his episode, as you guys know, the last question that I ask is around, well, in this case, what's the thing that people could do that would have the biggest impact on their anxiety and ability to get through these very bizarre, very uncertain times? And he said connection. And I was very surprised by that. He recommends cuddling a pet if you have it, certainly cuddling a loved one. We talked about reading books being a possible way for people that are completely isolated if you didn't have access to the internet.
Stay positive. You know, the money doesn't disappear. Things just move. Make room for what you want. I will tell you that I've lived through 97, 2001, 2008, and now this time. Every single one of those periods of my life ended up being the best time. And, I had a great analogy. There's a young mentee of mine, Jeff Fenster, owns a ton of Everbull franchises and multimillionaire, just a great kid. But he used the analogy, one in which he gives me credit for, but I don't remember. But he said, remember in Forrest Gump when with Lieutenant Dan and he went out on the water in the big storm, and they couldn't find any shrimp until because everybody was shrimping, but they go out there in the storm and they get all the shrimp because they stayed out there. Right? It's time to stay out there. It's time to know and utilize the skills, knowledge, and desire that you have.
If you want more advice, wisdom, guidance from other successful entrepreneurs on how you can navigate the coronavirus situation, check out the video right there next to me. I hope you find it valuable. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.